So with the Thoughtseizes and the Planeswalkers and the Uros, that's what we're going to be looking out for.
That's right. And, you know, there's a few cards that end up popping up and being quite important, and we'll see those as they come along. One of them that comes to mind is one we saw last round play a big, important role, which was Narset, Parter of Veils, which, boy, the last match that we covered last round, it was instrumental in the victory. And one of these players has one in their main deck, and that is, of course, the Sultai midrange in the hands of Corey. We'll see if that card ends up popping up. It is just a one of, though, in the main, so not likely to have a major impact here. But game one is underway. Both players politely saying hello to each other before, well, ripping apart each other's hands, playing a bunch of extra lands, slamming with Uro, etc. Here comes Growth Spiral to kick things off. No Thoughtseize in sight here. It's Thought Erasure, which unfortunately is not castable off of that one land. So it's going to have to be ship the turn back over to Luis Salvatto, who does have a copy of Thoughtseize here, Paul.
Yeah, likely to take the Erasure here, although Salvatto's hand doesn't really have a whole lot going for it, but I think he wants to be able to keep pace with the mana development from Corey Burkhart and fire off that Growth Spiral next turn if possible. And yeah, I mean, as you can see from kind of how this game plays out, it's not going to be especially fast. You're going to just see both players looking to develop their mana, toss in a Thoughtseize here or there to kind of slow down progression and try to basically position themselves to see if they can make the coast clear enough to resolve one of their heavy hitting cards.
That's right.
Corey has a couple of modifications, slight differences. We saw the Thought Erasure there. The Narset too, the one of, is extremely important in this matchup. Corey also, because he's playing Sultai and not 4-color, he has a slightly better mana base, which also means that he can afford to play the card Castle Lochthwain, which could also be the type of card that could kind of swing the tide, especially in a matchup like this where it's all about how many 2-for-1s you can resolve in a given game.
Yeah, and Castle Lochthwain particularly difficult to interact with as well, where basically every other form of advantage, there will be answers available on the other side. It's just a matter of if they have them or not. But, you know, lands, you got to come packing some very specific answers if you're trying to destroy lands here in Historic, and that's not the name of the game for Salvatto. By the way, things looking very good here for Burkhart. Has been able to generate a massive mana advantage, and now it's only going to get bigger. Nissa, who shakes the world, going on the stack. And take a look at Salvatto's hand. It's a bunch of lands and an eliminate. Best case scenario is to cycle a Triumph and hope to find an answer.
Yeah, and Salvatto's in trouble because I think the best thing that he can find here at this point is try to cycle the Triumph into a Mythos. If he does play a copy, a copy in the main to be able to answer this Nissa, because Corey, as he cast a hand disruption spell the turn earlier, knows that Luis doesn't have an answer for that Nissa.
Yeah, there's one in the main deck for Salvatto, but as you can see, it's Fatal Push and an Essence Scatter for the last two draws, and an unchecked Nissa who shakes the world ends the game very, very quickly indeed. And we may see that here as best case scenario looks to be to use the removal spell just to manage it for the time being. But yeah, no answer for Nissa is a major problem. Looks like it's going to be eliminate to take out the island. Triumph off the top here for Burkhart.
Yeah. The one saving grace right now is Corey wasn't able to follow up the Nissa with a Hydra Crisis, because that would basically just kind of slam the door shut. He does have a great play here, but Salvatto does have the answer to the Escaped Uro. Salvatto does have the Essence Scatter. Then on his turn, he will be able to Fatal Push at least one of the lands that Corey animates. So in the short term, he has some answers to what Corey can play, but again, Corey still has that Nissa on the battlefield, and every single turn will be able to generate a 3/3 threat and have a huge mana advantage here.
Yeah, that's right. As much as Salvatto is able to go punch for punch here for these last two turns, it's Nissa who's looming over this battlefield, and with no answer in sight for Salvatto and no pressure, card advantage, anything coming Salvatto's direction thus far, this one could spiral out of control quickly, even if he's able to keep up with it for a little while here. A Thoughtseize. That ain't it.
Nope.
We're going to see Thoughtseize take away a fatal push, but no targets for it anyway. Burkhart's not going to sweat that.
Yeah, the only benefit there is now that he Thoughtseize the way the fatal push, Salvatto can now top deck a Hydrate Crisis and make a 4/4, draw a couple cards, and have a body big enough to block these 3/3 lands.
Triumph's going to get cycled here on end step by Corey Burkhart, trying to get that graveyard filled back up for Uro, most likely. And of course, just looking for more action. Overgrown Tomb into a Thoughtseize, not really the name of the game here. These late game Thoughtseize is not performing well for our players. And of course, that's going to be to the advantage of Corey, as Corey's the one who is significantly ahead on board. Another thing to note here is that Nissa's plus this turn is going to put Nissa on 8 loyalty, and that is the amount for an ultimate as well. If Corey wants to work that into part of the game plan, we could see an ultimate from Nissa at some point here.
Yeah, I mean, it's at 8. I don't think he would be going for it to eliminate the Nissa, but if you can take it up to 9, then we might see Corey basically dump all the forests on his deck onto the battlefield, and they would all have Indestructible as well.
And that makes another Nissa basically death. What you'll often see in situations like this is that the players will wait one additional turn so that they get to keep Nissa on the battlefield. And really, with nothing else going on, I wouldn't be surprised to see Corey take that line here. Plus, just getting an in for 6, knocking your opponent down to 1 is also very tempting, as you would have 2 lethal threats with the threat of another land next turn. Really makes it impossible for Salvatto to come back, you'd think.
Yeah. I think we're going to see Corey go with a cycle here first, see what he finds before deciding what he wants to do. If for whatever reason this Corey somehow gets enough cards into his graveyard with the -8 on the Nissa, then we might see a consideration here.
Oh, to add that last card
to escape Uro. But it looks like he has enough here as is, as you see the Uro kind of light up there.
Yeah, I see that too. So, boy,
yeah,
what a turn here for Corey Burkhart, putting the finishing touches on what ended up being a landslide victory here in the first game. Luis Salvatto at no point in this game was ever in this. This is just a devastating one to watch from from Luis's perspective. And now there's a Hydrate Crisis as well. An Ether Gust is too little, too late here for Salvatto, and he's going to have to scoop him up and head into game number 2. So very easy game there from Corey Burkhart, Paul, as, he really just needed to play out the spells and just kind of let it go.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of those games where there's not a whole lot you could do when you're on Luis's side. You got Thoughtseize. Corey knew the coast was clear, slammed Nissa, and just kind of ran away with the game with it. So, still a lot more Magic to be played, and really interested to see how both of these players sideboard after this game.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to get right back into the action here and see how things go for this round. We're going to take a look at the action from the other perspective here as well, Paul. You may have noticed the frame rate was a little slow there for Corey's perspective. So we're going to try out seeing things from Salvatto. So when we get back into the match, don't be jarred. We are looking at it from the other side, especially because they are playing such similar lists that it might be easy to overlook, like, hey, we're back into it. And then you notice, oh, wait a second, this is not the same player. So we're working on that to try to make sure that your viewing experience is as good as possible. Thanks for your patience with that. Paul, really tough to suss out what's the most important thing in the mirror match here, as even though technically they're different decks with the addition of white mana in the hands of Luis Salvatto, when you look at the way that the match plays out between these two decks, there doesn't seem to be a huge difference in the list outside of maybe some mana considerations and a few separate cards.
Yeah, the thing is, your deck being a little bit slower doesn't really matter here. If you have more tap lands or the damage you take from your shock lands don't really matter that much either. So at the end of the day, I really do feel like this matchup just plays very similarly to just a mirror, essentially. And a lot of the games just really comes down to trying to position yourself to be the person that has the edge, that has that planeswalker on the board, or playing around what your opponents could have. And we kind of saw that in the first game. Now things get a little bit more interesting after sideboard, because now with the addition of Shark Typhoon from both sides, now you're not necessarily as safe when you just slam that Narset, right? If you go for a Narset at some point later than turn 3, your opponent can simply respond and maybe make a 3/3 Shark, and all of a sudden your Narset is dead. So there is some of that back and forth, that little chess game that happens when you kind of have to consider that as an additional option for this matchup. Also, you're going to see just people being a little bit more proactive here. You're not going to see a lot of, you're no longer going to see a game where both players just have a bunch of dead removal spells in their hand. Those now all get upgraded to counter magic and more threats like Narset and Shark Typhoon. So the games will definitely be a lot more interactive here after sideboard.
All right, let's get it underway. Again, we are watching from Luis Salvatto's perspective at this point. As you can see, he's got that good internet going. Ether Gust off the top of the library, a Shark Typhoon Extinction Event, and a pair of Growth Spirals in hand. Looking pretty good there to start developing things for Salvatto. What about for Burkhart? Pretty land heavy, but with Negate, Uro, and a Krasis at the top as well.
Yeah, the important card here is that Negate. It means that Corey does have the answer for a potential turn 3 Narset from Luis Salvatto. So it seems like a reasonable hand to keep. The real question here is whether or not he's going to go for that turn 3 Uro, or choose to wait to make sure that he has the counter magic available for a potential planeswalker from Luis Salvatto.
Look at that. Negate's going to hit the Growth Spiral, but plenty of lands to come. In addition to another copy of Growth Spiral, Salvatto could even have Ether Gust at the ready here, or potentially cycle the Shark Typhoon if that's the way forward. No, it looks like he wants to build out his mana. Change directions a little bit there, Paul. Found a Triome off of the Growth Spiral, decided just to put it into play.
Yeah, I like running out the Triome here because honestly, there's nothing really that you're too excited to Ether Gust there. I think the value of playing a tap land there is higher, because now you set up for the following turn where if Corey does tap out and play something like an Uro, if you top deck a Teferi or a Nissa, you can slam it, right? Because now you have an untapped mana source. Additionally, you can just Shark Typhoon for 3, which is really, really important if your opponent does choose to play something like a Narset. Now you have the perfect sizing to be able to get that Narset off the battlefield.
Kind of an interesting game here as well, Paul. Neither player knows the other's hand. You know, usually by this point in the game, somebody will have fired off some type of hand disruption spell, and so oftentimes both players will have, and there's a lot more information available here. These players are flying blind.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like. You know, I like no information. That's better.
Yeah, they should just agree to sideboard out Thoughtseizes, so it just makes the games more interesting.
Oh, I would like that.
He's got mana.
Yeah, there is mana available. End step Shark Typhoon gets cycled as 3/3 as well, so that's getting in there.
And this might be one of those. No.
This isn't it.
This isn't it.
Okay, all right.
But
just,
I mean,
just tell me straight, Paul.
This might be one of those games where you do see the just chained cycled Shark Typhoons kind of taking over, and as a result, that's going to force Corey to just kind of be a little more aggressive with what he's trying to do. Interesting
tap land here from Salvatto, potentially giving him a one size smaller Shark available for the cost of the 2 life. You know, at this point in the game, it doesn't seem like Salvatto's life total is what's important.
Yeah, I think maybe he's anticipating that he's probably going to be gusting this turn. And if he thinks he's going to be gusting, might as well keep your land tapped to gust and then cycle the Zagoth Triumph that he has in hand. That could potentially be the thought process, because of course, everybody watching wants the big Shark token to be made.
Well, chat has incredibly impeccable taste, as you can see, as they scream in all caps, hard cash Shark. I want it too. I'm with you, chat.
I'm not watching for that reason, but
yeah, the all caps.
Yeah. One interesting card that I want to talk about is the fact that Luis Salvatto chose to keep in Extinction Event after sideboard, because typically most people board out most of the removal spells that you have access to, and you just really want to fill up your deck with a bunch of hand disruption, counter magic, and threats. And I don't know if he just ran out of sideboard cards or if he actively thinks that it's a solid card in the matchup, because the one thing that it does have going for it is a clean way to permanently deal with an Uro that's in play, as it does exile creatures.
Look at this big draw step. Narset Parter avails, and then another one as well. Thank you very much, says Luis Salvatto. This is a huge card in the matchup, as many of your abilities to reload go away. And look at that, a Thoughtseize finally too.
That was big.
You see the opposing Narset Parter avails, as well as Hydrate Krasis. I guess you take Narset here. I mean, the Krasis gets a lot less scary if you have a Narset, right?
Yeah.
Or are we going to eliminate in response, though, if we're Corey Burkhart? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so Corey's going to be killing the Narset here, and then Luis is going to have the choice between getting the Krasis and the Narset, and both. There's arguments for both. I think you might want to take the Krasis because Corey can just slam something bigger, and then, which effectively just invalidates your creature that you have in play. Luis doesn't have a way to kill the Hydrate Krasis.
That eliminate was huge, because otherwise Salvatto could just take Narset and say, go ahead, play a Krasis. You don't get any cards out of the deal. I can Extinction Event it or find another answer and be good to go. But now giving Corey even the one-turn window to resolve the Krasis has a lot of downside to it. And it is going to be the Krasis going into the yard here.
Yeah, and this is one of the main reasons to play a card like Eliminate. I know there's two kind of key 2-mana removal spells that people have options to: Heartless Act, and Eliminate. And the fact that Eliminate can deal with Planeswalkers on top of most of the creatures in the format is the reason why people choose to play it. Additionally, it is a card that can kill Hydrate Krasis cleanly, whereas Heartless Act cannot.
Yeah, and it's huge, right? Being able to kill Narset is just massive in this matchup. It just shuts down all the fun stuff that your deck does. Your Krasis and your Uros just go away. So much better to have an answer for it. Oh, there's Tails End in hand now for Corey as well. A sideboard card for Burkhart.
Yeah, and looks like Corey is more than willing to just use the Narset as effectively a sorcery speed impulse for spells, right? Because he's going to play it, look at the top 4 cards, get a spell, but because Salvatto does have the 3/3 in play, he will be able to deal with that Narset. Now, the thing Corey really wants to find here is just some kind of removal spell. If you can find another Eliminate to get this Shark off the battlefield, all of a sudden his Narset will live.
And it looks like Negate going into hand here for Burkhart. So Tails End Negate with an Uro in the yard and a Narset on the battlefield says go to a clean battlefield outside of this Shark. And boy, huge deal, right? Now it's going to be flipped back in the other direction. Oh, looks like I lied.
Yeah, I mean,
Salvatto does not want to play Narset into the Negate.
Right, yeah. So given the fact that Salvatto knows about the Negate, we're just going to see a Shark Typhoon here cycled for 5. And then on the following turn, well, it looks like now Corey can actually escape the Uro, which is really, really big. And so now Luis needs to find an answer. He does have the answer in hand. And if Corey has, however, Corey doesn't have access to 4 mana, so he can't Tails End and Negate here. So Luis can kind of set this up. If he really wants to get rid of this Uro, he can play out the Narset, get Corey to counter it with a Negate, and then run out the Extinction Event to exile the Uro that's in play. And because it's odd, his Sharks tokens will still live.
This is an interesting choice here. Tails End can target or can counter activated, triggered, or legendary spells. So activated abilities, triggered abilities. That means you could counter that Shark trigger, right?
Yep. Ooh.
But chose not to. Oh, hello. Negate, I guess, to protect Nissa at this point.
Yeah, but yeah, really interesting to see what Luis will go to. I think it might be more important to try to get this Uro off the battlefield. And now with the Negate, he can do that multiple ways. Before, he would have had to try to bait a counter with a Narset. But now if he runs out the Narset, he could potentially get the Narset to just stick with that negate backup. But I think he might still be more interested in just using that extinction event to get the Uro. And if you're on Corey's side, I mean, I'm not really expecting an extinction event a lot of the time here.
Not at all.
So then I'm just looking at that Narset, and you're thinking, well, if that Narset resolves, I won't be able to draw a card when I attack with Uro. Additionally, my opponent has a 5/5 and a 3/3, so they can just double block. So that Narset's going to be a problem. So probably want to counter this Narset if you're in Corey's situation.
Curious to see if Corey reacts to the extinction event. It's not unheard of to have it in post board, but I think it's not the card that you'd be thinking about the most. There's tails, and although Salvatto looks like he may be considering just protecting Narset here. Now, well, the thing to consider here, right, is that if you do have Narset out, you've got the two blockers, and the card draw won't trigger, maybe it's fine. Maybe this is more important. And then, of course, you're getting a card as well. Oh, look at that. And eliminate, too.
Or
goodness sakes. How about we just do it all? Wow.
So I don't think you're going to see Luis attacking with both tokens here in case Corey top decks a Nissa who shakes the world. You want to at least leave back one token to kind of get in the way of that potential 3/3. Oh, and he top decks the Nissa who shakes the world. So really heads up here from Luis, only attacking with the one creature.
Super smart there from Luis Salvatto, and it's going to pay off for him big. If I'm Burkhart, I'm like, ugh, why are you playing so well? Like, it's really annoying. I even top decked. And again, we've seen this time and time again in this type of matchup. Narset Parter of Veils is really the key card. It is just an absolute backbreaker for the opposing player because of its static ability. And even to the point that Salvatto said, you know what, I'm not even going to attack with both of my sharks here just to try to protect this on the off chance that you rip a Nissa who shakes the world. That's how important that card is.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if I know you're giving up some damage, but because you're kind of ahead on board already, I wonder if there was maybe a consideration to only attack with the 3/3 and not the 5/5. If you did that, you have the 5/5 to keep the 3/3 at bay, and then on the following turn, if your opponent did play a Nissa here, you now have 2 flyers to kill the Nissa. As is, you're going to see a trade here, and the 5/5 shark is not going to be big enough to kill that Nissa that's in play.
Interesting, right? Because you know, when Salvatto makes that decision, he knows that he's hedging already, right? There's no guarantee that Burkhart has that card. Ooh, the full whiskey there on the Narset Parter of Veils. You hate to see that. Here comes Uro, though, Titan of Nature's Wrath. This one's from hand, though, right?
This one's from hand, so I imagine Corey's going to let this resolve and then use the Ether Gust if Luis goes for the escape. As you can see there, it looks like Luis has 12 cards in graveyard.
So plenty enough.
I guess you could go for the Ether Gust here just because if you do, Luis won't be able to escape it this turn.
Huh? Corey's just going to go for it here.
Oh, I mean, this makes some sense just given the fact that Corey does know Luis's hand. So Luis just can't do anything here. He just has that extinction event. So he doesn't want to give him a draw where Corey doesn't have an answer to.
So now what is the question? Castle Lochthwain drawn here by Corey Burkhart. We mentioned that card in our intro, Paul, and that could certainly start to become a factor right away.
Yeah, and actually now, I mean, the things have swung around. I think Corey has the edge here now. He's got a card that will draw him 2 or 3 cards. He's got a negate, and he's got this active Nissa here.
Well, he needs to find a way to deal with Narset, though, right? Like, again, Narset just sitting there, dominating this board once again.
Right, but he can still draw with the Castle Lochthwain during
every
Luis's
other turn.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that means he can at least find a way to get around that, because right now he doesn't really have a way to draw cards during his main phase anyways. Although he did draw the card that he can't use this turn now. There's a Shark Typhoon which he can't cast, or which he can't cycle, as he won't be able to draw the cards.
Right. I mean, he could do it if he needed the 2/2, right? Given that there's already a flyer, I don't know. Is it worth it? I mean, he could give himself 3 attackers next turn at a great cost.
Right.
By cycling here. Okay, well, this changes things. We may actually see him cycle, right? Even in lieu of getting the card, if this shark attacks.
Yeah, I mean, we could, although at this point, dare I say,
uh-oh.
No,
Where
you know
going,
what?
Paul?
No. Hold on.
Where are we going here, Paul? Don't tease me.
Well, it depends what he draws, but potentially you could see Corey slam Shark Typhoon. I'm not sure if he has the mana, but he could potentially slam Shark Typhoon, make a 3/3, then play that Nissa, and then make another 3/3.
He has a Nissa on the battlefield, right? Like, how hard could it be?
Yeah, so he's got 3 forests in play. I mean, we might see it at the same time. He could also cycle that Shark Typhoon and make it bigger than an Uro, right? That is also an option. He can make a 7/7 Shark Typhoon if you wanted, but we might see a hard cast Shark Typhoon here.
Yeah, baby.
There it is.
That's what I wanted. Chat, you can rejoice. We've got the Shark Typhoon on the battlefield. That's what we came here for. Oh, Paul, you saw the line. And I know you didn't want to like tease me, but it was there.
Look, I think he did it because he drew another big non-creature spell. If he hadn't drawn that Nissa off the top, I think he probably was going to go for the cycle there instead. Cycle, make a 7/7 token and block the Uro. But now, given that you have the Uro, given that you have the Nissa in play, I mean, you get that 5/5 shark, you make another 3/3. This Uro is not that big of a deal anymore.
Oh, little tiny Uro? No, that's yesterday's news because we got the real business now. Look at this. An attack with both lands would also get Narset off the battlefield. Going forward, wow, what a sequence for Burkhart.
And keep in mind, both of these decks, typically most mid-range decks play 1 to 2 copies of various destroy any permanent type effects, right? Maelstrom Pulse, Mythos of Nethroi. So Luis doesn't have a whole lot of cards in his deck. Oh,
hello!
He just drew it. Just drew it
off the top.
So he found this Mythos off the top, but Corey does have the negate that Luis knows about. So this is actually interesting. Luis may attack here with the Uro to try to get the double block here, right? And if I'm Luis, if that double block happens, I'm killing the land. If I kill the land, then the coast is clear, and you can use that Mythos to kill either the Nissa or the Shark Typhoon.
Oof. Both players ripping very well. Basically, every turn of this game, it has made it much more exciting every turn that it's gone for that reason. Okay, here comes 5/5 Shark and Uro.
One other possibility, if you're Corey here, I mean, it's really painful, but potentially you might want to just consider chump blocking the Uro with the 5/5. That feels really bad, but that allows you to keep up negate for whatever Luis might have here.
And look at that, Corey Burkhart all over it. And by the way, Paul, you are all over it. My goodness sakes. I feel like we should swap you in for one of these players here. You'd be winning this thing.
No, I probably would have screwed up like turn 4. But it's a lot easier when you can see both hands.
Yeah, that's true. But still, these lines are not obvious. And look at that disciplined play from Corey Burkhart, sending his 5/5 Shark to the bottom of the ocean there in order to keep up the mana for negate. And Salvatto has to be thinking, well, okay, that's annoying. But also, I did get the 5/5 Shark off the battlefield. It wasn't at no cost to Corey to do this.
Yeah, I mean, Corey still needs to find spells, right? That Scavenging Ooze was huge. That basically removed one of the ways Corey could try to get an advantage back in this game by escaping that Uro. And now, I mean, all he has is the ability to make a 3. Now he does have the Castle Lochthwain in play, so we're probably going to be seeing an activation here. And he's going to try to find. Can he? Is it time?
Did he just cast another one?
Is it time? I mean, what's better than 2? What's better than 1 Shark Typhoon? Ready?
He does have the
Are
mana
we
to
ready?
do it.
So he goes 2, 4, 6. He will not have the mana.
Negate.
He will not have the mana to negate because I believe he activated Nissa already.
I think so too. Or no, wait, this is at 1?
Oh, Nissa's at 1, so he hasn't activated it yet. So what?
This is incredible.
What phase is he in? Why was this like an upkeep? Is he in his upkeep?
No, he's in his first main.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why the Nissa isn't. I thought. Oh, never mind. Okay, so yeah, if he does. Yeah. Well, Corey. I mean, he's behind enough where I think that's he's got to go for the home run play here.
Do it. Oh, he's going to attack with everything first. Now, can this Scavenging Ooze eat up one of these lands?
I assume there's no creatures in the graveyard if this attack's happening.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So now Corey can cycle Shark Typhoon for 6, or not be a coward here and play a Shark Typhoon. Thoughts?
Corey?
Do
it. Yes, Corey. Yes. There you go. Double trouble. 2 Shark Typhoons, 1 triggering the other. And all Salvatto can do is look at this Mythos of Nethroi and say, well, fine, I guess I'll make you use a negate.
And he knows it's going to be countered, but he doesn't want that negate to make 2 tokens. So he has to go for it now to try to draw something in the future. Now, keep in mind, Luis does have Extinction Event in hand, right? All these tokens being generated, all these 3/3s in play are all converted mana cost, are all even converted mana cost. Any token are all converted mana cost even. So Luis can set up a really big turn here where he goes Extinction Event for even, wipe out your board. And as a result, Corey chose not to negate the Mythos on the Shark Typhoon because he knows Extinction Event is in Luis's hand. So he wants to make sure that he has a negate up for that potential blow up play. We might even just see this Nissa resolve because I think Extinction Event resolving is just too big of a problem here.
It looks like it's lethal, actually, right?
Well, he would lose his
14.
Well, he would lose his Ooze and his token as well.
Oh, the Ooze would go too. Right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay, so not quite lethal, but holy smokes, what a game between these two.
Yeah, I just want another Shark Typhoon off the top, honestly.
I do too. I mean, I'm into it. Corey's long time been one of my favorite players to watch, and he just somehow moved higher in the ranking. Nissa who shakes the world. Hey, Corey's had one for like 4 or 5 turns. Why don't you get one too, Salvatto?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's such a blowout, though. If you go negate. Luis goes Extinction Event even. All the lands in the Shark token gets removed. Then Uro kills Nissa, and then Luis is up a card.
Wow, is that what's happening here, though?
I think that's what we're going to see.
There needs to be a land in hand if you're sitting.
Yeah, Corey was hoping he didn't have the land.
It's right, and there was, and there it goes. Extinction Event wiping everything off the battlefield except for Uro.
Oh yeah, and Corey's in trouble now because even if he finds a spell. If it's not a removal spell for Uro, the creature that he makes is not going to be big enough to get that Uro off the battlefield.
No, he didn't even have enough mana to cast another Shark Typhoon if he had drawn it. Now, can he afford to start activating his castle?
Yeah, yes. I'm curious. He could have looked to activate the castle and find an Aether Gust. Did he not? Did he board out the Aether Gusts? I thought maybe you might want to be digging for a potential answer here because I think he had the mana to activate Castle Locthwain, but wow.
And again, stretching into the white mana for Luis Salvatto gives him access to Teferi, Hero of Dominaria of all things, out of the board. And this is desperation time now for Burkhart. He finds Nissa and Uro. Can he do both? Probably. Oh, but the Aether Gust in hand for Salvatto is going to hit Nissa and I assume lock up the win. Wow. Luis Salvatto patience rewarded, finds the victory there after an extremely hard-fought game, Paul. That was really a great back and forth between two mid-range decks. That's what you hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both players just playing to their outs in that game, and Corey making it an extremely exciting and entertaining game with those hard cash Shark Typhoons. Not quite enough because of the decision for Luis Salvatto to keep those extinction events in his deck after sideboard.
That's right. Well, we've still got another game to bring you, so let's see who's going to win this thing between these two players. And welcome back to coverage here of the Zendikar Rising Championship. Marshall Cycliffe with Paul Cheon. And boy, oh boy, we're finishing up the historic rounds. We've got this one and one more to go, but let's focus in on this particular match, Paul, because it has been a banger. These two have been going at it with top deck after top deck, cool plays, really subtle interactions, a lot of great stuff happening. And of course, it's going to produce a game 3 for us. How could it go any other way?
Yeah, and I'm really seeing some interesting sideboarding decisions here from Luis. One, he took out a land. There's an Uro that he also boarded out because the games go long, so that makes sense. Ultimately, you just really need that one Uro to that you want to escape at some point later in the game. Another really interesting decision is he kept in some number of Fatal Push. And I think that's because he recognizes the fact that Shark Typhoon is a card, and he wants to be able to have a cheap, efficient answer to a potential Shark Typhoon that could threaten a attack to kill one of his planeswalkers.
You can see Corey's putting the finishing touches on the sideboard this time around.
Or potentially giant sharks created by Shark Typhoons. That's also
you know, the top decks from both players was so incredible that game, because at any point, you know, there were multiple times where one player had generated such a great advantage that it would tip over the edge if they were left unchecked. It's just everybody kept drawing everything that they needed to prevent that and keep it close. All right, let's get into game number 3 here between Corey Burkhart and Luis Salvatto. These players, by the way, doing very well in the tournament, coming in at 7-2 into the round.
Oh, Luis's mana is super awkward here. So he can't growth spiral turn 2, but by choosing to get forest, he also cannot negate turn 2. But by drawing Thoughtseize, he can now play Thoughtseize turn 2. Although yeah, so his mana was just awkward because he didn't have a shock land available to him there.
Right. All right, Thoughtseize goes on the stack, sees Nissa, Hydreight Krasis eliminate and an Uro in hand. Salvatto deciding what the biggest threat is. And of course, the players are also looking at their own hand and saying, well, I have an answer for this. Well, that's a rarity. Uro going into the yard here. You don't see that very often.
What a draw.
What was it? Oh, Narset Parter.
Had it.
Didn't have it, as Luis Salvatto has to look on and go, well.
Oh, but one good draw deserves another here. Eliminate off the top. So now Luis can go eliminate. He can't grow spiral because Narset's in play. He could go for the riskier line. I think he was considering it, which was grow spiral on your opponent's turn on their upkeep. But if you get met by a negate, it's just a complete disaster. So you can't afford to do that, really.
And there's at least the Ether Gust in hand. And there was a negate coming too. But yeah, there's an Ether Gust in hand that Salvatto knows about. So he says, okay, fine. And he's going to feel very relieved to have found the answer to Narset before it got on the battlefield for a bunch of turns. Here comes the baby Cray, little Hydreight Krasis for 2/2. Fatal Push is going to send it packing, it looks like. And then we may see the exact same play on the other side here, depending on what Salvatto finds.
Yeah, although given the potential of a Nissu Shakes the World, I think, Thoughtseize. Whenever you draw Thoughtseize, usually the play is to just cast Thoughtseize in this matchup. So
that's right. And as you can see, a lot of targets here in hand for Burkhart, who's now out of lands, just has 5 spells in hand, which isn't the worst case scenario. Thoughtseize is taking a look at Nissa Who Shakes the World. There's also Ether Gust and Negate as kind of defensive spells, if you will. And Salvatto has to kind of plan out how these next couple of turns are going to go. As you mentioned, a nice little setup here for Growth Spiral and Negate being left available on Salvatto's side anyway, though he's still just going to take away Nissa. Oh, he's going to go for the Growth Spiral right now. A little bit risky.
I guess he just wants to make sure that it resolves, but if he doesn't find an untapped land,
then
he won't have access to the negate.
Yeah. But he's fine taking the risk, and it all worked out. No land there as another Hydreight Krasis comes off the top of the library for Burkhart. Looks like Burkhart prefers to just hold on to negate, Growth Spiral, Ether Gust, and eliminate, keeping the reactive options open.
Yeah, and the thing Luis needs to be mindful of is just kind of that Uro that's lingering in the graveyard. Corey has to be getting pretty close here. If he can go eliminate the Hydreight Krasis into Growth Spiral, I would guess that it's really likely that he would have enough cards in graveyard here to escape that Uro, and currently Luis doesn't have an answer. Oh, and the Fabled Passage here too.
All right, there's the 4/4 Hydreight Krasis on the battlefield. And we're going to see eliminate to kill the Krasis, keeping the board clear. And it's Narset Parter of Veils off the top for Burkhart, and he's facing down Salvatto, who's now completely tapped out.
Yeah, the upside of going with Narset here is that you get to keep up negate backup for whatever Luis might do. So I think he's kind of favoring that. If Corey maybe found land number 6, he could have potentially considered just going for the Uro plus negate backup there instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's gonna be happy with that. Oh no. Growth Spiral?
Don't think Corey's countering that one.
This is Corey's upkeep. He finds Indatha Triome, decides just to keep it, probably going to go for a cycle on that.
Yeah, and now, I mean, we're going to see a Narset activation, but now, given that Corey has drawn land number 6, probably going to see an Uro here. Don't think you want to be running out a Nissa, because if it gets countered, all of a sudden you don't have mana to respond to whatever your opponent's trying to do, or you can find the Thoughtseize.
Yeah, and this is really valuable for Corey Burkhart, because it's going to get in a gate out of hand, or it's going to let him see what Salvatto's working with. Either way, very valuable information for Corey Burkhart. Now he has cleared the way for Nissa. Now he doesn't know that, and he'll probably be reticent to run it out, but we'll see. Yeah, he's going to play the tapped Overgrown Tomb, which is a bit of a bummer for him, although he has the negate for the Thoughtseize, and a land off the top here for Salvatto doesn't give him many options.
Yeah, I think he's just very happy with his current position right now. He's got the Narset in play, and he just doesn't want to put himself in a position where Luis somehow can draw out of it. And so now having access to that double counter means that it's just way more likely for him to be able to have answers to what Luis might play that turn, and then follow it up with a threat this turn.
Boy, Burkhart really has some great options now. Uro in the yard, ready to come back from escape. There's a Hydroid Crisis available, or Nissa plus maybe Uro, something along those lines, if he wants to kind of go for the, shoot for the stars here. One unknown card left in hand here for Salvatto. Now, the interesting part as well is that Salvatto is going to get to cycle the Triome, and we'll see what Salvatto can find.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like Corey just has too many threats here. The thing is, one of the best cards Luis can draw, if Narset wasn't in play, would have been something like a Hydroid Crisis, which would allow him to kind of draw a bunch of cards and get back into this. But given the Narset, I mean, the things, the types of cards that he can draw to get out of this all of a sudden are much more restricted, because he needs to be able to deal with this Narset before he can start drawing a bunch of cards.
And you can see Salvatto taking a quick look while he's searching for a land at what cards he's looking for. And it looks like Ether Gust is the name of the game. Can he hit it off of this Triome? It's a long shot, to say the least. And he finds another copy of Thoughtseize. Boy, that would have been nice on his main phase there. But
yeah, this is rough.
This is now really starting to snowball. Now, we've seen players get way ahead and not quite be able to hang on. I mean, this looks like a one-turn window to me. If Salvatto doesn't find something next turn, I think it's about all she wrote here for this round. And we'll see Corey Burkhart advance to 8-2.
Yeah, and just note, I just want to talk about how patient Corey has been playing this game, just knowing that he's the one that's kind of ahead on resources, and always making sure that he keeps up those counter spells instead of just jamming whatever threat he had in hand. He played this very, very well. And, Corey is just kind of a control player at heart. I remember when I first came back and decided to play competitive Magic again, I played him at a local PTQ, and we just kind of we were playing the Sphinx's Revelation Mirror next to each other. And I was just thinking, wow, this guy's really, really good, because I've never heard of him at the time. And all of a sudden now we see him in the Rivals division and in really, really good position here